Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full there's no space left for alcohol.
In this two-part series, we invite our friends John, Molly, and Liz to share with us what they believe to be the hardest part of sobriety. The discussion that follows covers subjects like mommy wine culture, dealing with difficult emotions, boredom, and learning to trust ourselves and our emotions. Listen as we all share about our struggles and offer support, wisdom, and advice.
Remember that every time you hit like, or especially subscribe or follow, it lets the podcast platforms know that you think we've shared valuable content here. And other people that might benefit from our podcast will be more likely to see it. And Molly starts us off.
So why'd you pick this topic, Steve? It's interesting.
It was actually, I think, something that Liz talked about.
Liz asked me one time what the hardest part of recovery is. Do you remember that, Liz? It was just a random question one day, and you were like, what is the hardest part of recovery? I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Yeah. I have a vague recollection of asking you that, but I remember when I asked, I didn't have an answer for it myself, and I still don't.
Yeah, I kind of came up with something, and then I think I said for me, I think it's handling difficult emotions without numbing them. And then I asked you back, and you were like, I don't have an answer for that. It's a great question. So then I told Steve, this is a great topic for an episode. So here we are. So thank you, Liz, for giving us the topic.
Oh, thanks.
Just like that. I mean, really, if you think about it, it's a really hard question
It's
to
a
answer.
huge open-ended question. There's,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you were to look into the future of possible answers, it would just branch off into 80,000 subjects. But at the same time, that's actually why it makes it a cool question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely intriguing because, like you said, it can go, you can take this really anywhere.
And it
Right?
really kind of depends. So when you first said hardest, I was like, how am I going to define hardest? Because there's lots of ways for something to be hard,
Mhm.
And my initial thought was that I could consider hardest something that I'm dealing with the most often, the most recurrent. So therefore it takes the most of my time and most of my effort because it's always there, and in that respect, I thought just general alcohol culture, because it's just the one unavoidable thing in life, I know obviously certain situations and emotions are unavoidable, but just the advertisements, and if you even just want to watch one of your favorite shows or try a new show on Netflix, everything has booze in it practically, unless it's for kids, so that was what I thought of, was just the unavoidable reality of alcohol being everywhere all the time,
That's a really good point, because something, as a mom, and it gets talked about all the time, but the mommy wine culture, right? Oh, mom's had a hard day, go have a glass of wine. And even on social media, on Instagram, I follow these different mom accounts, and you get, you see memes like that all the time. And so it's just this kind of, it's like you said, Molly, it's just always in your face. You just can't get away from it.
Yeah, and that one really bothers me too, the mom one especially, because it's let's target an entire category of people that we know are usually overworked and tired, and let's give them an immediate coping mechanism that we know is not going to be good for them. That's just really evil, insidious stuff to me right there.
Plus, by definition, they've got kids to model this to.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
So true.
Modeling
So
it for the next generation. It's
already
free advertising.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, all the ads and all the TV shows, and it's already hard to not romanticize drinking. Like it's nice out right now here, and so it's really easy to fall into, I wish I could just sit outside and have a glass of wine on the back porch, and then when you watch all of that stuff, it makes the romanticizing even harder to get past, because it makes everything look all perfect and beautiful and lovely, and it's really easy to forget all of the miserable, awful things that actually come from trying to do that these days.
It's interesting, Molly. I was actually listening to your Sober Town podcast. So I've been listening to it because I get like bits and pieces in the car. That's how I listen to podcasts these days. And at one point, you were talking about when you moved into your house and then when you had some time off of work because of COVID, that you were using that time to drink, right? And as you were talking about it, like in my mind, I was like, oh man, that sounds so great. And then it's like, but why? I mean, it's like I have this week off from work, and this is the first time probably ever I've had time off from work where I haven't been drinking through it, right? And but it's still like that was something that I was thinking about kind of at the same time of our topic tonight, just thinking like, okay, just reprogramming my brain to not automatically hear like, oh, you have the day off and you were drinking through it. That's awesome. That sounds great. And be like, wait, no, actually it's not great, right? And I don't even want that for myself, but my initial reaction is like, that sounds like an excellent idea, you know?
Yeah, it's so programmed in your head, like free time, oh, it'll be better with alcohol, like because everything is better with alcohol. Like in the end, for me, I was even going to like see movies and like sneak in like those little paper boxes of wine, the miniature ones. Like I would just chuck two of them in my purse and just sneak them in the back of the movie theater, because even that was fun. And it's just, yeah, it's a very, very like deep internalized message. Just everything's better when you drink, but it's not
I think
true at all. Yeah.
that actually brings up like what's one of the hardest things for me is free time. And I've been a little more distant lately, and part of it's like weather's a little warmer, I'm working outside and in my shop, and when I'm exhausted, I'm not thinking about drinking because I'm physically exhausted and working with power tools. Like I've never been that drunk that I was like, a table saw sounds like a good idea. But it's hard when like there's time off, like it's going to rain this week, and I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? I'm not going to power tools on an extension cord in the rain like that. Now I'm more anxious, and we've had for a few summers where my like we'll take like a little family vacation or something, not so much COVID, but my wife has often said like, I'll take the kids like on a trip with her family or something, and I've had time off where it's just been like completely out of control. That was the end of last summer, and they might do something, and part of me is like, I love the quiet. There's no kids. Love my wife, but when she's gone, it's great too. But to do it sober is actually like, I'm like, I don't, what am I going to do?
I get really anxious. So I homeschool my kids. They're here all the time. And now that they're getting a little bit older and they have lives, there are times where I'm just at home alone for like 8 hours and I get super anxious. There are things to do. Like I can keep myself busy, but for whatever reason, that amount of free time just stresses me out. There are a lot of times I'll end up just taking like a really long nap because I have no idea what to do with myself. I don't think I'm usually really tempted to drink. It's just that for so long I did that I don't really know what to do with time like that anymore. Like I can usually use up an hour or two of free time pretty easily. But when you give me a huge chunk like that and there's no one in the house that has needs that need to be met, then I just get all stressed out and anxious and I don't know what to do with myself.
I feel like that's something that I'm going to be experiencing coming up here real soon because I'm really never left alone, right? Like if I am, it's not really for that long. It might be a day, but normally like I'm running around, I'm doing something. There's not like, you know, I'm not really left alone for very long with the kids and everything else. Now I'm going to be separated from that. I'm going to have a weekend where it's like Now what am I going to do? Like, I'm not used to at all making that decision, let alone making a heck of a lot of other decisions. So I got like this whole new experience of Steve coming up that's going to be um, very, very new. It's going to be very interesting. Um, so like I can't say that that's going to be the hardest part yet, but I think that is going to be like what you guys are talking about right now. I'm going to be experiencing that. So that's going to be a whole new interesting dynamic that's going to happen. I'm going to have to just figure it out. I'm just going to have to. So that anxiety, that anxiousness, or that sort of thing, I'm already like thinking in my head, what am I going to do in that
I,
free time?
I
Anything
think
you want. That's the cool part.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the
it's the
thing too. It's
terrifying
like,
part.
yeah, well, it's like anything I want. What the frig does anything I want mean?
No.
Like I
So,
understand it.
That's the question of adulthood, you know?
No,
It's like
right?
that's not even sobriety, that's just life. Like what do I do with my life? You
Mhm.
know?
so I think making decisions is really hard,
It is.
because like
Yes.
now there are some things where I'm clear and I can be like, here's what I should do. And sometimes where like now I'm like thinking about it too much, and I'm like, oh, for the day when I was like half at it and didn't care, and like whatever was fine. Now I'm like, I'm not like that, and I just it's too much thinking. Um, and sometimes having decisions where I'm like, I don't I don't like me. Like I've got a good answer. I just don't like it. Like I
Hmm.
know what I should do, but I want
Mm.
no part of this. But I'm insufficiently like blotted out to run away from it. Like I used to just like I would like sometimes literally forget about things I needed to do. Right? Like maybe bad ideas. I'd procrastinate on them and I'd just forget. Like I would put it off so long. Now there's none of that. It's like, oh, I actually have to do the responsible thing. That's unfortunate.
I know when I first quit drinking, making even the smallest decision felt like something I couldn't do. Like the first couple weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I remember like just trying to figure out which shoes to wear, standing there looking at two pairs of shoes, like frozen. My brain just couldn't process that simple decision. It was really overwhelming for a while. And I mean, I'm a mom. Like I didn't get to take time off when I was, first quitting drinking. And it was like it's one split second decision after the other all day long. And I felt like I was just everything was just a fog and a blur, and I had no idea what to do about anything. It was really weird. Like it was almost surreal, but I just could not make a decision for anything.
Yeah, I remember moments like that too. There is a vivid memory I have of probably for a good 10 minutes just pacing in my living room aimlessly, like just walking around in a circle, just like thinking out loud, talking to myself, just trying to figure out what I was going to do other than not drink, you know? Because
Mhm.
this in the beginning, it's like that all-encompassing thought, like go do it, go do it, go do it. And then you have to just steer yourself away from that. And for me, like the natural progression of things became to do things that I know will benefit me in some way. And at first that was like very practical things like just taking a walk, it's like go get some exercise. That's like a basic human necessity, right? Drink water, basic human necessity. Eat food, basic human necessity. And I still kind of come back to those now. Like when I feel overwhelmed or when I don't know what to do, I'm like, well, just start with one of the basics and then see maybe how you feel after that, you know?
Simplify it.
Hmm.
So I'm curious about that because when I get into the state of overwhelm, which is where I kind of live these days, it's it's like I know those specific tools, like what you just said, but it is so hard. And that sounds so dumb because going for a walk is, in theory, as simple as opening your front door and just walking out of it, right? And but that I almost become paralyzed in inactivity or inability to do something that will make me feel better. So I'm curious what y'all do in those situations.
I think I call it aggressive self-care because there are things that I know I should be doing or that will make me feel better, but I almost have this whiny toddler response to them sometimes, like, no, dang it, I don't want to do that. Dang it, but it's like in the back of your head, you're like, I know this will make me feel better. And that's the adult talking, like, just do it, and some of it, some days it's even just like washing my face or trying to wash my hair, straighten my hair, just doing those little things that kind of make you feel better. And I don't know, like I think it's because some of us find it hard to care for ourselves. And there's like that mental block, like, I don't deserve this somehow. And sometimes I'm just like, shut up, do it anyway.
I have a list of things, especially for self-care. I actually sat and wrote a list one day of things that I can do. And it's everything super simple from just like Molly said, just wash your face and, take a bath to other, like go to the store and buy myself some flowers, little things like that that are really simple. And they're kind of divided up into if I really can't muster the energy or the desire to do anything, here are some very basic things that I can still do. But when I get to the point that I need those things, I can't even think about what they are. Like, I don't even remember more than just maybe go for a walk or whatever. So I actually have a list in a notebook where if I'm just falling apart, I can open it and look at it and see something that looks like I think I can do this one thing. And then I go and do it.
Funny you say that, because when you were talking about that, I was like, once you get that emotionally wrapped up in something, you just forget a whole bunch of like really simple, smart things. You just forget it. They just seem to disappear, and so you just get stuck in that la la land. So it's a good idea to have it written down somewhere, because you can go and find a list. That's solid. All of the ideas are on the list, so you only have to remember one thing, not a list of 5 or 6 or 7,
Mhm.
whatever
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say, like, when at work we talk about people having like crisis plans. We're like, literally print it out and stick it on your fridge. Like, we want everyone in the house to find it for you. Now, this plan may or may not really want to be in your house, but like someplace very obvious, like a physical copy, can't miss it. I think it's helpful. I'll say, like, for me though, I do it less in the moment, but things are going well, like even they're not going well, I have a list on my phone of things I'm supposed to do every day, right? To kind of get ahead of some of it too, when I'm at my most sober, so that like I'm so good at putting them off or being like, I'm busy today. I don't want to do all these things I know are going to be good for me. And some days I'm good at checking boxes and having streaks of success, and some days I'm not. Um, but it helps a little bit.
Yeah, I have a list. I mean, especially I guess in the beginning, I had my whole morning routine written out, my whole evening routine written out. And then in the middle was a list of things that I wanted to do each day. Like some of it was important, like fold a load of laundry or play with the dogs or play piano, little things that like I try to do a little bit each day. And whenever there's a day where those paralyzed days where you're just like, what do I do? Sometimes it's nice just to have all of that stuff written there for you so you don't have to think. It's just here's what you have to do on this day. And it really helps. It takes the thinking out of it because sometimes the thinking of things is just paralyzing when everything else is too much. I'm
Yeah,
also
there's,
a list maker by habit and by nature, so there's that.
I love a list.
Yeah.
So Molly,
Hmm.
this is one of the hardest things for me, and I know you've probably experienced this too, is trusting my emotions. Actually trusting and believing that the way I feel is real, not questioning it. And I know you've helped me a bunch out with this one, because I've questioned myself a lot.
Yeah. I will be happy to report now that I'm almost at 19 months. So in the beginning of that, I couldn't make this claim, but like now I can definitely say that I pretty much trust my own emotions. Like there's certain circumstances that pop up that I just haven't dealt with yet that I still need to figure it out. But but yeah, I know for the longest time it wasn't just a simple process of like something happening and then me reacting to it being like, oh, that's how I think about that thing. Like that's how it is now. I'll be like something happens and I'll be like, oh, that's how I feel, right?
Mhm.
It was like something happens and I'm like, oh, should I feel that way? Is that why do I think this? Like, is this something that I'm feeling because of this? Am I wrong for this? Like, it was like this 12-step process to then decide on what the best thing to think is. And even when I did decide, I wasn't ever really sure. I was
Mhm.
just like, I think this is the best that I can do right now, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then maybe I thought about it like anxiously after the fact, you know, like when you lay in bed at night, you're like, did I do the right thing? You know, and then they usually think about it obsessively. But no, I don't really do that anymore. So I don't know if it was a lot of just therapy and getting over my relationship that like really trained my brain into, you know, like you went through, Steve, you know, just doubting everything about yourself and that you're incapable and incompetent as a human and you have to, you know, get approval for everything. But yeah, just sobriety, and I mean sobriety number one, but then time and therapy and friends. Those are all
Yeah.
things that really help. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, I went through like a really big. I mean, if it wasn't sobriety, I wouldn't have gotten this far. I mean, that's
Mhm.
there's no doubt about that. But
It's like the baseline. Yeah.
yeah, it's the beginning of the rest of this everything else. Without that, you don't have any of the rest of it. But I had an extremely hard time with questioning myself, questioning how I feel, and I wrote it all down. I mean, you guys got to experience it all too. That was hard. That was really hard. Sitting in that and then wondering if the way I felt was right. And I mean, the amount of times I sat on this bed in a puddle of tears, questioning that alone, and that turning me into a puddle because now I'm paralyzed. Now I don't even know what I'm gonna do next because I don't know that if I feel this way because of the conversation that I just had or how it went, or am I just nuts? Because I felt like I was nuts. I don't know how many times. And it took a lot out of me over and over and over again. I mean, I was told like this has to stop at some point. You're gonna have to do something about this because it got to a point where it like every weekend I was turning into a puddle because I ended up paralyzed. Well, it took all of that to finally wake up and say, and it took people like you, Molly, and it took people to continually reaffirm that your emotions are valid. The way I feel is valid. And it took a lot. Now, I could tell you now that I don't question myself very much. And when I do, I'm questioning myself out loud. But that is super hard. It's super hard when you go flip-flop back and forth and end up just being paralyzed by the entire situation and then digest it all over again and then look at something in a new like there's growth in every single one of those little times that I turned myself into a puddle when I was just crying and trying to figure it out. There's little bits and pieces that of the puzzle that started getting put together. I just had to go through it all to get there. If anything, that was probably the most difficult part for me is getting through all of that to get to where I am now. And it's still not gonna it's gonna get easier in some ways and more difficult in other ways, which is part of the adventure. Now it's just an adventure. Now it's just let's get on the horse and see where it's gonna take me.
I kind of, I can really relate to that. Mine was more, I would feel something and strongly. I feel everything strongly. And then I would be made to feel like I was overreacting. So for me, it was not necessarily doubting the emotion that I was having, but just feeling like it was too much. Like I was taking something, I was too upset, I was too sad, I was too angry, I was too whatever it was, and trying to figure out how to make it stop so that I was no longer overreacting. And that's where the drinking came in, right? Because as soon as you start drinking, then the emotions start getting numbed. And just letting myself feel things, even though somebody else said that I was overreacting, just go ahead and feel it the way that I feel it. That I'm still learning how to do that without just trying to find some way to turn it off. I think that I had to realize when I quit drinking and all of the really big emotions came, I still felt like, what am I supposed to do to turn them off now that I'm not drinking? Reality is you're just supposed to go ahead and feel them the way that they are. And that took so I didn't understand that concept for a while. So I was still just fighting against everything because anytime I let any emotions out, at least, to the level that I feel them, it would make people around me uncomfortable. And then I'd just be told, you're taking it too far, it's too much. And it wasn't anger. It was more just like sadness or whatever it was. So I really had to learn to just feel things the way that I feel them, and that's okay too. Just because it's not the same way somebody else would feel it or the way somebody tells me I should be feeling it.
Yeah, the words like should and shouldn't, I realized really quickly that, like, because that's a lot of my internal dialogue, or at least it was, is like, I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing it. And I'm like, why do I think that? Who gave me that should or that shouldn't? And then I think, oh, it was probably my mom doing this, or my dad doing that, or like society doing that, And then I think, are they right? Like, why? Where's the logic and where's the data behind why they think something is right that I am currently thinking is then right? It's like, and then it's affecting my actions. And essentially, I came to this giant conclusion that everyone's opinion on everything is just the culmination of their trauma and the things that they have unresolved. And so, should and shouldn't are completely subjective words. And you can take them and do with them like as you want, but there is no like one answer and one correctness for any emotion. And it's like there are people who that can just cry at like some random TV commercial. Should they? Shouldn't they? But that I look at people like that and I'm like, I love you. I love that you're that expressive. Like I wish I could do that. I have way too much buried still. I'm working on it. But yeah, there's no should or shouldn't about just about everything, as long as it's not hurting anyone.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of this 2-part series. Listen next week as we continue the conversation. Also, I'd like to thank you for sharing space with us. Remember to subscribe or follow to keep getting new content. And if you have any comments or topic suggestions, we'd love to hear from you at throughtheglassrecovery@gmail.com. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore life on the other side of alcohol.